All right. Well, sorry for my technical issues, everybody. I want to welcome you all. My name is Gina Sullivan. I am the chair of Voices for Enfield. For those of you who don't know, Voices for Enfield is an established third-party, nonpartisan that promotes and supports community involvement in all town-related issues. As chair of the party, I want to reassure you that our message to you is to never stop using your voice. Please use your voice as much as possible to maintain democracy at all levels of government. I want to let you know that we will be recording this session tonight to be posted on our Facebook page at a later date. You will be placed on mute for the duration of the meeting, and we're asking you if you have any questions to put them in the chat. We did receive a lot of questions, so we will try to get to them as quickly as we can tonight. And we will also post them on our Voices for Enfield page for you to be able to reference at a later time. Joining us tonight, we're very excited to have the members of the newly formed group, Enfield Create a Civilian Review Board. Thank you guys for joining us. Marcy Talicio is your moderator tonight, and I will now turn it over to her with better internet connection. Take it away, Marcy.
Okay, thank you, Gina, and good luck over there. Thank you for participating tonight. I really do appreciate the time that you're taking out of your afternoon, evening to spend with us. This is a really important topic, and I'm happy to facilitate this. I think it's something that, you know, is a little controversial, which is always kind of fun. But, you know, I definitely want to hear more from you guys. If each of you wants to just take a minute and, you know, introduce yourselves, you know, we can kick it off with introductions.
Great. Kelly, do you want me to go first? You're gonna go first.
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay, super. My name is Nick Hopkins, and firstly, thanks for having us here. It's nice to have a community discussion about this, and also for people to be able to ask questions. I moved to Enfield last November from Illinois. My wife had gotten a job up at Springfield College, and I'm an attorney. I can work just about anywhere. So we've been here for a little bit now, and I've been working with a group. I kind of started this effort after everything with George Floyd. Just thought it might be something that would be useful to improve local government. And some people have become interested in it as well. And so I'm very interested in answering everyone's questions about it.
Thank you, Nick. Matt?
I'm Matt Despard. I live in Enfield. I grew up here and then I moved away for a while, and I've been back for about 5 years. I got involved with this, you know, when Nick created this proposal. I've been active for about 4 or 5 years, like in national politics. But not really local issues. And so this is sort of a way for me to get more involved in my community. And I think it's a really important issue for us to be discussing.
Thank you.
Do you want me to go next?
Yep.
Kelly, I've lived in Enfield for, I don't know, on and off a lot in the last 15 years. I'm from all over the country, though. I've lived in, I lost count of how many states. I've been very active in politics for quite a while, very active on the line of, you know, police brutality and things that were going on in the country before the Michael Brown incident. So I've been paying very, very close attention to it. And I've sought, you know, other groups nationally to see what they were doing, and was researching on how they were dealing with certain problems, because I think other people also were seeing that this was a problem getting out of hand. And it's always been a problem, but it was quickly getting more and more out of hand with the divisions that we were seeing in, you know, the Obama years. I'm not entirely sure what was causing that, but So after the George Floyd and the Breonna Taylor incident, I saw a lot of places nationally asking for civilian review boards, and I absolutely thought it was something that we needed here. I do agree that it's not the same as in other places of the country, but it can't hurt. We might as well get ahead of this, even if we're not like a Maryland or, you know, a Baltimore or New York. I'd like us not to ever go down that road, and I think a review board would prevent that.
Thank you. So can you explain just what is the overall vision? Where do you see this going? What is the goal?
Nick,
Sure. Sure. Firstly, let me share the proposed ordinance that I've drafted up with the group. I'm just going to post it in the chat for people to check out. It's, you know, it's written as it might appear if it were passed as an ordinance, and I think it's definitely useful to break it down because it's, you know, very much written in legalese. But the vision is for a volunteer board, kind of a committee, subcommittee of the town council that would review complaints when they're made in Enfield. So someone files a complaint, the review board is notified, and then they review the police reports. They may speak to a police officer. They review the facts. This board would not have any disciplinary power at all. It would just be a means of people being able to review that, and then they would produce a public report at the end of that kind of review. The report would state the facts and then also be publicly available. So really the function of this board is access and ease of access for the public for this kind of information. Has no bearing on, you know, whether local police would do their own investigation or any kind of internal thing, or even if they wanted to discipline somebody. This is just about the facts and then presenting those in a report for the public.
And does anybody else want to chime in on that, Matt or Kelly?
I will if you'd like.
The other use that I'm seeing for this in other parts of the country, and I was hoping we'd be able to do the same, is review boards can often highlight good officers that have been kind of overlooked. And, you know, quite often I've seen that there are diamonds in the rough in police departments, and, you know, for whatever reason that's going on and whatever dynamics that police departments often have, some of these, you know, shining stars kind of get buried. And I've seen civilian review boards, you know, start to notice those people, and those people become promoted a little bit quicker, which is kind of what you want to do anyway. So, I mean, it's not just to, let's say, highlight, you know, a problem that may be arising, but it's also to help acknowledge, you know, those officers do 100%, go above and beyond, and are really there as community members.
Thank you. So can you explain what type of complaints would come your way?
Sure. So it would be any complaint that's filed with the police department. So if, you know, if someone has, you know, that's every complaint, whether that's a frivolous complaint or a complaint that, you know, may ultimately result in the police department taking action against it. That's sort of irrelevant to this process. How it would work is someone would file a complaint, and then the review board would review the facts of that, whether those facts completely contradict the person submitting a complaint, or whether they very much verify what that person is saying. And so those get put in a report, and then the public will be able to read those and, you know, draw whatever the conclusions they may. I think that's an important thing that Kelly pointed out. Under the normal process, it's kind of hard for people to see the back end of things. If someone files a complaint and that complaint is frivolous, you know, the police department is going to investigate it, but they're not going to, you know, be talking about it openly. You know, it's very much a done thing for them. And the same for, you know, if someone files a complaint and there is internal action that's taken by EPD, you know, that's not really something people hear about. So this allows and creates a mechanism for people to have more trust in the police if they don't, and also to see good, good things that the police officers are doing. Because there are frivolous complaints, they definitely happen, but it's hard to really know what the facts are without spending a lot of time, effort, and sometimes money tracking down all the police reports through a FOIA process. So this makes this process much easier, and then people are able to engage more with the police department and see what are the basis for these complaints.
Okay. I did read a little bit about how you would make up your board, who would sit on the board. Can you just kind of go into detail a little bit more about how those individuals would be chosen, and would there be an application process?
Sure. I should also say this is the draft ordinance I've shared is very much a draft, and our hope is that people proposing things allows us to kind of change and hone this. If people have have thoughts on how these board members should be selected differently, I think it's definitely important for people to articulate those. But under the current draft ordinance that I proposed, this would be volunteers who submit applications to the town board. They would write a letter of interest stating why they'd like to be on the board, and the board would review those applications and then appoint people to the board. Now there are specific kind of divisions or quotas rather. There's under the current ordinance, we want people from all parts of town. So there's a requirement that, and it's broken up by the voting districts. So, and I'll just kind of read from the ordinance right now. So the civilian review board shall have no more than 11 with a quorum of 6, and shall at minimum consist of members selected as follows: 1 member from each of the voting districts in the town of Enfield, and 2 at-large members. So the mayor would select one of the at-large members, and then the minority party would select one of the other at-large member. So that guarantees that it's always going to be bipartisan, and also that you're going to have members from all the voting districts in Enfield.
Great, thank you. So we talked a little bit so far about not investigations, but reviews. So if you are reviewing a complaint, what would be like an average turnaround time? Do you have any estimation on that?
I mean, that depends on a lot of things.
I actually looked into that. Yeah, the factors are way too great. Like it's really, it all depends on, what the complaint entails, who the parties are, like, do they want to actually participate, or do they just want to like sign the complaint and walk away and never deal with it again? There's too many factors really to give a future estimated timeline on how quickly we'd want to handle each complaint. It would be, maybe a little bit of time, or maybe a couple of days, or, if it was something terrible, a couple of months. I mean, it's not something that we'd be able to put a gauge on. It'd be case by case.
Yeah, I think that the police reports for an incident, and if there's any video for an incident, could be reviewed within a week. It would be a matter of EPD just giving that to the police review board, and the police review board just taking a look at it. In terms of writing up the facts of a report, I can't imagine these reports would be particularly long, but that will ultimately be a decision for the people who end up being appointed by the town council to be on that board. But it's really concerned with the facts of each particular complaint, and those would be, comprise what's in the report, what eyewitnesses saw, and also what the video. So I think for something which isn't particularly complicated, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect maybe 2 to 3 weeks. So the outcome of that is not that there's some kind of disciplinary action. It's just a report is created, and so that report is public. Ideally, it would be hosted on the town page, and so people could take a look at the facts for every complaint, frivolous complaints, non-frivolous complaints. That's ultimately not something that the police review board would be deciding. It's just about the facts.
Right. Does anybody have any questions regarding the makeup of the review board or their mission and kind of goal in moving forward?
Yeah, I have a question. I think it's I think it's a pretty decent concept. And I can agree with it. But I have a couple points, questions. Does this require sanction from the town council?
What do you mean when you say sanction, sir?
Do they agree to support this? Do they agree that it should exist? Do they approve its existence like any other boards we have in town?
And I may have misunderstood. Did you say, do they approve of it now, or are you saying, would they have to approve of it for it to function?
Would they have to approve it for it to be functional?
Oh, absolutely. This would have to be passed by the town council in order for this to function as it's written. You know, it's so.
Cool. Have you had any challenges or issues or conflicts with this before with civilian review boards, with internal investigations by the police department on an incident? Conflicts is what I'm looking for.
Kelly, do you want to take this one?
I'm not grasping. I don't know why. I'm too tired.
That's okay.
I'm not grasping the question very well. Are you
Ray,
asking?
I'm sorry, Ray, can you just repeat it? Because I didn't really hear it myself.
Do you guys see any conflict?
Oh, do you see any pushback? Is that what you're asking?
Not necessarily pushback, just conflict with internal investigations that would be going on into a complaint. Have you seen experienced any incidents of that?
We experienced, but we haven't started it yet. So I
So
don't know.
you're saying between the review board and internal affairs, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Conflict in that way.
Oh.
No, I mean, not exactly, because the review board doesn't exist at this point, but you know, talking with people who have tried to look at past incidents, it does, you know, you do have to have some specialized knowledge to be able to request documents to be able to, you know, review a particular incident if you wanted. For example, you know, requesting police reports through a FOIA request. You know, not everyone knows how to do that. It can also cost some money to get, you know, to get videos, for example. And I think that the important point is, and you know, you could view this as a conflict, I suppose, but the determinations of complaints are not currently public. And I think, you know, that makes a lot of sense if you're reviewing a police officer's, you know, actions on a particular event and it's going to go in their file. You know, having some, you know, security around that is important. You don't want people going through your business all the time. They are, of course, public employees, and so I think, you know, the core facts of that are important for the public to know. So someone could go through a lot of time and trouble to get these, to get the facts for each report, each incident. But I think personally, it makes sense if someone thinks it's important enough, you know, to file a complaint. That's where the review board would kick in and review that, and then offer a public report of the facts so that people could review it if they wanted to. You know, if that shows the officer did a good job, that's great. If it doesn't, you know, the public should know about that. There have been, you know, some incidents in the past, in recent past, where maybe a review board would have been useful for allowing the Enfield public to know, you know, kind of some things that are going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you talk about that, Kelly?
Well, I don't know who all exactly is here at the moment, but I mean, I think, you know, the majority of us remember the years of Warden, and that was a perfect example of something the community should have been aware of. Officer Warden, you know, cost us a lot of money in the end. And his, I'm not going to say reign of terror because I've seen cops, you know, 1,000 times worse, but the problems that arose with him while he was in the department, had we had some sort of collection of data, I think more people would have been aware. And if the public were more aware that there was a problem, the public could have maybe pushed to be, you know, with the PD to be, you know, we need to get rid of this person, we need to address this person, or see if we can maybe re-navigate where we're putting him in the community. But the public, the only people who knew about it were the communities that he was directly impacting, the ones that he was walking the beat on. The rest of the town kind of had no clue. And in situations like that, we could have saved the town nearly $1 million over, you know, a certain period of time. So, I mean, having information is always better than not having information.
Mhm.
Thank you, Kelly. So
Does that answer his question, or?
Yeah, pretty much.
yeah, okay. So I may have missed it. So you are working together with internal affairs, or you're both receiving the complaints and moving forward, or?
It would
So
be
the,
independent, but I mean, after we're done, or whenever, the committee is done with their review, they, would turn over those results. If it helps IA, great. If it doesn't,
I
at least
see.
we've got data collected for the people in the communities to know.
Do we
yeah,
have?
so as it's written, there's no, it's not like what the police review board is doing directly interfaces with the IA for EPD, internal investigations. If anybody doesn't know the acronym, there's no back and forth there. They would be probably looking at the same documents, and so the ordinance sort of suggests that EPD would provide police review, police reports, and the video, if there's any video. IA would be looking at that as well, but there's no interplay between the two. And currently the review board doesn't exist. This is just a proposed ordinance, so there's none of that right now. We're not reviewing complaints that are filed.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Another question, please. I find this very, very interesting and not a bad thing, by the way. Would you also see this board to be a communications conduit for policies, both input to the PD and output to the community?
Yeah, I totally see this as a conduit, as a way to build community relations, as a way to build community trust, and as a means to connect that lack of communication that the citizens have with our police department. I definitely see it as a means to that. Yes.
Thank you.
One of the oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the suggestions one of our group members made, and he's someone who's previously in law enforcement. I don't think he's necessarily, oh, there he is, yes, he is here. His thinking was, over time, as these reports are made, people may review them, and, certain patterns may emerge, like if complaints are coming from one particular area of town, it may be useful to think about, what's generating these, is there a particularly fractious relationship between individuals there, or is this one particular police officer who's maybe not getting along well with people, and maybe that person could be moved to a different part of town. There are a lot of things that can come out of the data, but I think it's important that information is out there. I completely agree with Kelly saying having information is always better than not having information. This makes it a lot easier for the public to be able to see that information. So yeah.
And as far as the question I just saw, pop up that was slightly related, is it going to help the police departments move faster? I don't think the civilian reward board would directly have anything to do with that per se, but I think maybe it would be a highlight as to what police departments are doing. Police departments get complaints, they deal with things in the time frames that they can. And I think sometimes maybe citizens don't realize that they're over there working behind the scenes on whatever's coming through. But because you don't see the immediate direct action, citizens quite often be like, oh, you're not doing anything, when actually they are. They just have a process, and they have to follow their process, just like everybody else has to follow a process, just like IA would have to follow a process. So I think this would also help citizens when they know that there's a complaint, instead of being at the police where you're not doing anything, this might also help the community see that yes, they are working on these issues or working on these problems, even if you're not seeing an immediate reaction by them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just another communication.
The one other way that I think that the review board could assist with things going faster relative to Sue's question here is that if there is an incident or a really public incident or complaint, people could know to reach out to the civilian review board, and people could articulate how to. I'm sure there are a lot of people who reach out to the EPD and need help with general troubleshooting, very basic information. about, how do I file a complaint? How does all this stuff work? That the review board members, I'm sure, would be interested in doing that. And that could definitely save the police department time. There's no reason why they need to be helping with basic, troubleshooting questions.
Yeah.
But,
So I've had a lot of conversations with people who I've tried to explain what it is that you guys are trying to do, because the perception is that you're potentially putting a divide, you're creating conflict with the police department, but in fact you are trying to work, together with the community as well as the police department to be able to come to some common ground. Is that correct? Is that kind of how you would?
That's the way I perceive it. That's the way I've seen it in other communities. It acts as a bridge. It's a bridge between the citizens and the department that often people don't feel is there. Even if it was there, they may not have noticed it was there. Police departments have other things to do than, promote and do PR stuff. So, I mean, these boards quite often turn into, a connector between the two.
Yeah, if someone was interested in learning about particular interactions that happen in their town, they could simply review these complaints and see the facts of the complaints. They're there. The ordinance calls for this stuff to be collected and written objectively, and so people are able to view that. One of the I think the goals that and I had in doing this is helping community members have more trust in their police if that doesn't exist now, and also more engagement. Like I said, one could do the legwork if they had the knowledge on how to request or FOIA police reports to read about particular incidences. But here, this very much accelerates the process and allows someone to just click a link and read about a complaint, read the facts specifically. It's not a determination whether that police officer did a good job or a bad job. It's just the facts. And so if local people are able to craft better policy based on those facts, or have more engagement, or have more trust in their police, I think that's a good thing.
Great. So do you guys have data right now about any complaints, say the past 3 years, 2 years? How many complaints have come in and whether or not they've been substantiated?
We've got a little bit. I've done some digging. There's not a lot. All I have is a summary that was done in 2018. And in the time frame of the summary, which was, I think, just shy of a year, there were 19 complaints that IA took up on, and there was only 3 that they actually went in depth on. That's kind of all we have. When you're looking for this kind of information, historically, it is under lock and key. It is very difficult to get access to. It's hard to find statistics and data on this stuff for the reason why these review boards are popping up. People want to know this information. It's not readily available. It's not easily accessible. And that's why people get the feeling that it's all, behind the curtain. And so we don't have a lot of data. We don't. All I saw so far was that summary, and I've been digging and digging and not getting too far.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry.
No.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say, IA evaluations are never going to be public. It's not something you can get through FOIA. These are the police department's internal deliberation about a particular police officer's actions. That stuff's never going to be public, but we definitely think there's a middle ground there. We want things that are accessible via FOIA, and also why would the review board be looking at every incident? Well, it's just the ones where people file complaints. So the public's able to look at that information when someone files a complaint, because the review board would review that and write a report about it. That the IA stuff is really not ever going to be public, but there are places where police departments every year put out a report about how many complaints are made. The reports that Kelly's referencing, there have been a couple in the last few years that EPD's put out and are publicly available, but they have very basic information. And that for some people I think is a little unsatisfying. And it's not something necessarily that will continue from what we've seen. So allowing people to, as an on-ramp, to be able to engage with their local government, in particular, the work that the police department is doing, we think that's important. So
quick question, and this may go to Eileen or maybe Tom. Didn't we have something like this a few years back where civilians were engaged with the police department, a kind of committee or something that were going back and forth with various things? Nothing to the degree of reviewing complaints, but there wasn't a group involved. I remember seeing things on social media about it.
Yeah. You're talking about Friends of the Enfield Police.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's I believe, Ray, that's exactly what it was. I'm not sure if they're still meeting. I know I actually addressed the group a couple of times. They were trying to get 501c status, but it was a little bit different than what this is. What this new actually state law allows the towns to undertake. And if I may just 1 minute make a connection with ethic boards. The state made ethics boards law a number of years ago for government and municipal government. The same reasons now we see these laws coming into effect, although they're not mandatory yet. They're actually voluntary. A lot of towns in Connecticut are slowly moving to these review boards. And doctors, nurses, they've been reviewed for years and years, and they reviewed every year, and they have their names. Actually, people that violate their license, they publish them in the newspaper. So this is nothing new to the country, and I think it's just moving in a direction that I think more and more people want to see a little more open communication with, and I think they're great ideas, and I thank you for trying to put this together.
Thank you, Tom. As you can see, we have Representative Tom Arnone here too to help answer any questions.
No, I don't want to disappoint those who know me. Do we have any idea what the financial impact would be to the police department with FOIs and other interactions that they have? I see Tom smiling.
And I'm sure there'll be, especially in records department. The records department has, maybe 3 employees, and from what I know, maybe a little more. Yeah, there are going to be definitely more requests for records and more records going into those commissions. But I think it's a small price we pay for openness in government.
I agree with that, and it's quite possible. Have you talked to the chief about this yet?
We have
Ray,
not.
you're stealing all my questions.
About time I did.
At this point, we haven't. We wanted to make sure that we got a good slice of community input before taking this, any forward. I don't really want to be the person who writes this solely. It should be a community thing if it is going to exist past just a draft ordinance that I've written. So going forward, I think we definitely want to do that, and I'm sure that he'll have some input about this. On the point of cost. As it's proposed here, the board would be volunteer. There would of course be costs associated with the group meeting. So there would be space, in a local, town building for the review board to meet however often they would meet. And maybe that's a month, every month, or twice a month. That'll depend on the group whenever they're formed. And there would be costs associated with preserving the reports. I think those costs would be minimal since they could easily be hosted on the town website via portal. So, this is a volunteer board. There are other places in Connecticut in particular that have review boards, and they have budgets for them. I think in the context of Enfield, it's perfectly fine to have a volunteer one going forward because of there may be 20 complaints, 30 complaints a year that would be reviewed. And many of them are not particularly complicated to the extent that that a review board would want to try to, get an expert opinion or something. But so it'll be a very low cost The ordinance does allow, written in there, it does allow the town council to apportion money if they so choose to go towards the review board, but that would be, you know, I don't think it,
far off.
if they wanted to, if they find that useful, they could, but I don't really necessarily see it at this point. But I also don't want to limit the town council.
Thank you. Let's see here. So, you know, I know that Black Lives Matters kind of kickstarted this proposal for you guys. I know it's probably something you've been thinking about for a while, but given the current climate, it seems appropriate to push forward with this idea. How do you feel, you know, as an outsider looking in now, how do you feel Enfield Police Department, what's the relationship like with the community as far as you can tell right now?
Who would you like to answer that?
Sure. You know, I've been here for a year. I participated in the local protest, you know, because I think that you know, anti-racism work is really important. You know, I've had a couple interactions with Enfield Police. I live on Bigelow. You know, I've talked to some of the officers who were doing walking patrols. I walked up on a conversation between somebody who's, I think, being investigated, just to articulate, to make sure they know what their rights are. Overall, you know, those are positive interactions. I don't really know how everyone in the town feels, but I do know that I think this is a reasonable way for people to become more engaged with their police department. And ultimately, you know, my personal beliefs or anyone else, you know, I think we definitely have a range in this group that's working toward to try to create this review board. There's definitely a range, but our particular individual beliefs are relevant for what the board will be doing. The town council will be appointing the people who will be sitting on the review board. It's a requirement that they, you know, they find facts and write up these facts objectively. And it's not really about whether they personally think the officer did a good job or a bad job. It's about what those facts were. You know, it's really up to the public to decide, you know, if they think the officer did a good job, they think the complaint is frivolous. It's up to the public. And ultimately, you know, people will look at these and hopefully participate in their government in a way that forwards public policy. But the review board itself is not making the determinations. They're just writing, you know, factual reports.
Would you be interviewing witnesses, you know, to a particular situation, a complaint?
If there were witnesses, yes, and if those witnesses were willing to, you know, partake in it, that would be ideal. I mean, it's the best way to get facts.
Are there any legal ramifications to that if it's an ongoing investigation?
In what regard? For the person who's being interviewed, or if they refuse? What do you mean?
For you guys, for whoever's doing the interviewing, for the interviewee. And how does that impact an ongoing investigation, especially if it's kind of controversial or intense or pretty serious? Like maybe, unfortunately, a murder investigation or a melee, which has happened recently in our town.
Sure. So, you know, if this is a sense that maybe, you know, maybe the complaint involves a juvenile or something, people who are reviewing this would still be subject to, or, you know, the review board members would still be subject to state law. I think probably what will happen, most of the stuff, you know, it's part of a public investigation. If the police department, you know, is you know, reviewing something sensitive, or they want to make sure that information is not, you know, maybe they're pursuing a suspect that they haven't arrested. I think making sure to have a good relationship with the police department is key. I don't see really very much legal liability for someone who would be reviewing these complaints. Someone is filing a complaint of their own accord, and the vast majority of the stuff will be within the public record, things that are FOIable. In instances that you're dealing with you know, specialty information, you know, maybe a juvenile case, I think it's important to have a good relationship so that the review board and the police department can, you know, make sure that they're respecting that sensitivity.
So I received a question in the chat. According to the 2010 census, Enfield census, over 14% of Enfield's population consists of people of color. Me personally, I think it's much higher now in 2020.
I think so too.
However, our town continues to be run and supervised by all white leaders and bosses and police officers and et cetera. Do you have any feedback on that? Because I can predict complaints coming in, of course, of, you know, conflict between white officers and individuals of color.
Sure. So the draft ordinance, and this is in some ways kind of an unsatisfying answer, but the draft ordinance includes a provision in there that says the Civilian Review Board shall be reflective of the town of Enfield's diversity. It doesn't necessarily say racial diversity or class diversity, but it's important that that be in there. Ultimately, it is the town council who's appointing the members of the review board. So that important part of this really rests on them. I mean, as does many things. And so, you know, if it turns out, you know, if this is passed and you know, maybe there are many people from all parts of town, you know, various races who are applying, but maybe only white people are appointed to the board, that would be a remedy that would be sought through electing different town council representatives. It's very hard to mandate racial diversity in this review board. It is very important that, I mean, just as with all parts of government, that it be reflective of the diversity of the town. But it's really hard to kind of put that in here. I definitely think what you're saying is very important. And I hope, you know, if the review board comes to pass, I hope that it is reflective as is required in the ordinance.
Thank you. Another question, let's see. Would you be able to, or would you be looking to review complaints from the past? And even with current complaints, would there be a non-disclosure, and what are the possibilities of a leak and how would that be handled?
Nick, I think you're better for that question.
Okay. So in terms of, you know, leaks, just about all this information will be available, you know, through FOIA, through, you know, time, effort, and money for people to get. Like I did talk about, you know, instances before where there could be a particular kind of sensitivity. That's possible. Again, you know, anybody who sits on this review board or, you know, is working within state government is still subject to state law. And I think it's important that if this is passed, you know, the town attorney does a really good job, and I'm sure he would be thinking about any possible liability for people who are on this board. But if we're talking about, you know, if we're talking about public reports for police records, this shouldn't really be an issue. It's just, these are things that people could obtain anyway through FOIA. We're just making it much easier to access. I think it would be, I hope that the review board would establish a culture and decorum in which they're not constantly leaking things. I think that's important, and I'm confident the town council could appoint people who are going to respect this process. In terms of prior you know, complaints, as it's written, the review board would only be reviewing complaints after the review board is created. You know, if people, you know, if residents are interested in making sure that, you know, complaints were done in a good way in the past, I think that would really have to be a separate undertaking. Maybe people do think that, but the review board is not really cut out to do that. It's very much forward thinking.
Sorry. Thank you. So what are your next steps? I know you have a petition. Do you have a date to bring this to the town council?
So we don't currently have a date as of yet. I will share the petition in the chat. I think what we're trying to work towards is feeling like there's enough public input, and we've looked at it from all sides to be able to present that to the town council. That's really what we're trying to work for. That's not, that's not a really specific criterion, but we do think that's important. Making sure that everyone's voices are heard, making sure that the town is actually interested in a review board, and making sure that those things are covered is a necessary step. So, if that takes a week, great. If that takes 3 weeks, that's also okay. It's a very important part of this process. So if individuals who are watching this want to give feedback or have questions, please reach out to us. There's also a Facebook group called Create a Civilian Review Board Enfield that people can reach out to. I also have an email address that I'll share here. But at the point that we're not really hearing anything new from people who are reaching out, I think we'll go ahead and present that to the town council. And certainly if individuals have suggestions on how to do that, I think those would be welcome as well.
Tom, I wanted to ask you, you are very close to, this bill being passed, just by way of your position with the state. Can you summarize and kind of put into words what this bill means for us?
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with the governor on this when he was asking us local reps what we felt about the upcoming police bill. And there was a lot of pushback on civilian boards. And at that time I said, it's always, good cops have nothing to fear. My dad was a cop, my brother was in corrections his whole life. I grew up around policemen my entire life. In this particular part of the bill, because the bill is it's a 71-page bill. It's got a lot of work in it, none of which I had on my committee. But it introduces this sort of review board for the first time under law. And as time goes further, like I had cited before with ethics committees, these things can become a requirement, not a voluntary part of the law as it stands now. For internal investigations, just to throw a backup, the Inspector General in this bill has the power, if an internal investigation is going on, to actually stop the review board from investigating any further for up to 6 months. So there is power over the board itself, and the Inspector General job is now the replacement of the prosecutors that used to prosecute police officers. And I say this all the time, this bill was written, I call it personally the warden bill. And I was a councilman through all these lawsuits the town faced. So this was written just for police officers like that were, the prosecutor at the time, she was recently disciplined, was taking many of these cases and actually shelving them. In the case of that officer, they wouldn't prosecute. So once they don't prosecute on the state side, your case is done. These things then they go into civil court, and the money just pours out because you don't want to go to court with a lot of these. You end up settling in them all, which was a very difficult thing for to sit there for counselors to do at the time, because good cops, and the mass majority are good cops. And you're throwing money out and making them look like they're all guilty. And that's another part of the secrecy that I think we need to get out of in this bill. And I see, Nick, we need to bring these out to the citizens so they understand why we make the decisions on some of these prosecutions that we do. So now we have an Inspector General that will handle these cases, and they will have some powers over it. They'll also have subpoena powers. So this bill really does have a little bit of teeth into it. So you as a civilian review board, you'll actually be able to subpoena people to come in and actually talk. So it's not you're not going to get anybody in there to do it. So they give you a little power. It's a beginning bill. It's the introduction to these review boards, and now it's up to the towns on how they feel to start doing these. And it's going to be a political process, and that political process Godspeed on that, because it's going to be a tough road to hoe.
Thank you. And do you know, Tom, within that bill, whether any funding for such boards was discussed or passed?
No funding as of now, and we really didn't fund any of the a lot of things. Yeah, these unfunded mandates. So,
Yes.
but that gives us things to do as a legislator. So I sit here and listen to these, listen to your conversations, listen to the new board's conversations, and that gives me the chance to write bills to add to this bill or correct parts of this bill or build this bill further. So that's the next step. The next step is, can we do it? And if we do it, how do we make it better?
Great. Thank you. Does anybody have any closing thoughts? Nick, Matt, Kelly?
I did want to say thanks, Tom, for pointing that out about there is oversight from the state on these boards. It's not just, they can run wild. And I do just want to, my final thing, firstly, thank you guys so much for having us. There is a lot of confusion about this, but at its core, this thing shouldn't be political. It's about the facts. And I completely agree with Tom's sentiment about, police officers who are doing their job and really have nothing to worry about with this. The review board has no disciplinary power. It's just about getting the facts to people and ideally helping them engage with their local government. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
I too. I thank you for the opportunity. I'm glad we can help, facilitate and get the message out there, and I'm hoping we can build a support.
And one
you.
last thing.
Thank you very much.
On Nick's point with the discipline, that's going to be now in this bill up to post training of the state training of police officers. They now have the power to not only discipline, but revoke a certificate of a police officer. So now there's a review board on the state side that are not what this review board is supposed to be doing.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I think it's super important, and thanks for having us. But this is, it can be easily viewed as like an anti-police initiative, and it is not that. This is really about facilitating connection between the police and the community, and just ease of access of information, cheaper access to information, because it can get very expensive if you're trying to do this kind of stuff on your own. And so it really builds a bridge to I just feel like, to a better place between police and the community. Yeah, and I just really hope that we can gain support for this, and because I think that even the people that are sort of not on board, I think they would be surprised at how this would end up playing out.
I think if I can say real quick, I hate to interrupt, Matt, I'm sorry. I think confusion is because what people are seeing from like media bombardment on a regular basis. I think some of the lack of support that we're seeing is because people are comparing what they're seeing on our streets to, places like Chicago and New York and, Baltimore and things like that. And, oh, well, we're not like that, so we shouldn't need we shouldn't need a civilian review board. I think it's a misnomer. Like, you don't have to have a world of problems. You don't even have to have many problems, but we need to help amplify that. Regardless, a collection of data can do nothing but good. And bad officers, exactly what Tom said. If bad officers have nothing to fear, nothing to worry about. I mean, it's really just like I said, and you said, Matt, it's a bridge. That's all this is. It's a bridge.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all. This was very informative, and I think answered a lot of questions that, the public has. So I really do appreciate you guys coming on, and those that tuned in to view the meeting. I really do appreciate you as well.
Mercy?
Well, Ray,
I know.
You're right. Just kidding. No, thank you, Ray. Really, you had some good questions, so thank you for tuning in.
Take care. Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will see you.
You say that.
Huh?
Bet you never thought you'd hear me say
I
that.
know. Well, thank you. I'll take it and run with it. So thank you guys. Yes, and we will see you next Wednesday at 6 for our next meeting.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye.